It is 4:07 a.m. She has no clue how early it is. It's 5 a.m. liquid IV.
Woo!
G, what's the time you're going for today?
Breaking 2.
Breaking 2.
Yep.
Gonna go 3:05, I think.
Nice, yeah.
Hopefully.
So I've started this to really look at what happens between going from the Houston Marathon to the Eugene Marathon, with the goal being that the Eugene Marathon is where I will finally go sub-3. To give kind of a recap of what's been happening since really CIM, the California National Marathon, I went out and I ran a 3:09. That was a bonk. That was not the best day I could have. It was a lot warmer in Sacramento than I guess it had ever been for CIM. It reached like 60 degrees, sunny, and I split 1:30, 1:39 on my halves. Coming out of that, I knew I could go a lot faster. I felt like that day I could have done a 3:03 to a 3:06, but definitely not a 3 flat. So went on a cruise with my parents, and I ended up running 60 miles on the treadmill there, just to stay in base block condition. And I think staying in that base block condition really helped me attack the next 2 weeks with workouts at high mileage, high volume, without having to waste time of getting back in shape. So the first week coming out of that looked like essentially 10 speed miles with about 65 miles of running, and the next week was about 70 miles, capping it off with a 24-mile long run with 8 miles at a 6:45. I want to go 10, but I ended up throwing up on the bayou for a couple miles. Not important. The next important thing was going into the Houston Marathon. So I tapered really well, made sure I wasn't staying up super late. I was taking good use of my time. And come race day, it was about 45 degrees, overcast, and it was actually getting colder throughout the day, which I thought was pretty interesting because usually it's the exact opposite. It gets warmer as time goes on. Went out and essentially did a 3:04 with 1:31.46 and 1:32.40 being my two splits. At a 3:04.21, it's starting to feel real. It's starting to feel like, okay, I've got the result to show. I'm not swinging for a giant 10-minute PR. I'm swinging for 262 seconds improvement to get down to 2:59.59. So the day after the marathon, usually that entire week, I take 3 weeks to get back up to my 60 miles per week average, and then just working in speed miles to take about a month. This time it was a little different. I actually took the dog out for a walk, ended up running 2 miles with her, really slow, like 9-minute per mile pace, but that really helped me get back into shape immediately. So that week after the marathon, I ended up running 63 miles that week, 26 from the marathon and 37 from just other training. And I capped it off on that Saturday with 13 miles running total and 5 miles at a 6:40. This kind of leads me to what I think are going to be the 3 key things that I work on as far as training for the Eugene Marathon. The first is going to be doing more speed miles in general. I looked at the data for how I trained for CIM, and I averaged 56 miles of running with 9 miles per week at speed. It's about a 15% ratio. That's not enough. So for this training block, I'm going to aim for 65 miles per week of actual just running volume in general. And at the same time, I'm going to aim for 13 miles per week of speed work. That's a 20% ratio. By running both more miles and more intense miles, that means that those other 52 miles per week, I'm gonna have to scale back. I'm gonna have to take them at a very low heart rate run, and I'm gonna have to be a lot more proactive as far as active recovery, foam rolling, stretching, and whatever else that might be. The second thing I wanna look at is running more 640s in general. I was really only doing 640s when it came to my long run workouts during the build up to CIM, and I wasn't getting used to just running them in general. That's going to change come January, February, March. I'd like to be running at least 10 miles at 640 pace every single week, if not faster. As far as January's goes, I think I've already done a really good job of that, but I can always improve. And the third thing is going to be running miles faster than 620. This is something that I've kind of identified as a weakness that occurred in January, where I ran a lot of 640s, but I didn't really run anything faster. So when I drew up a workout to run at 630 pace, it was a lot faster than something I felt like I had been able to do in a really long time. So keeping those legs fresh, making sure that I'm keeping my legs used to running at faster and faster paces, even if I'm only focusing on that 640 pace overall. So what did January actually look like? January was a really good month as far as running. I hit 229.7 miles on the month. The past 3 Januaries in a row, I've always hit around 160. So those extra 70 miles, I think, really came from focusing on improving and not getting out of shape. So I didn't have to waste weeks getting back into shape. The 2 weeks after the marathon looked like 70 miles with 12 miles at speed. I capped that off with a 17-mile run with 9 miles at a 640 pace, which was an insane workout. The ability to do that not only 2 weeks after a marathon, but essentially in week 1 of the build, that's just setting me up really well to be able to go out there and crush some 13, 15, and 17-mile long run workouts. The next week and this current week also looked like 70 miles with 14 at speed. But this week was a little different because I was starting to feel the fatigue of running all those extra miles. I really haven't run 70 miles per week for weeks to weeks straight ever in my life. Getting used to that, I started to feel a whole lot more sore. I started to feel even my recovery runs at 140 beats per minute heart rate were not the same. So this Wednesday, I ended up running in the morning 6 miles at a 640 pace during a 9-mile run. In the afternoon, I did a 4-mile run with 2 miles at a 613 pace. That 613 pace really obliterated my stomach, my legs. The first mile was a 605, the next mile was a 618, and that 618 mile, I felt like I was holding on for dear life. That was an attempt to get some faster miles down on my legs, to get used to running those really fast paces and keep mechanics good. And then the final workout was yesterday, where I ran 17 miles with 2 miles at a 635. Ideally, I wanted to go out at a 635 pace for 6 miles, but I just didn't have it in me that day. Part of that came down to I went to a new run club on Thursday and did 4 miles at a 650 pace there. So I already got some extra speed work in. It's just that it wasn't in that continuous 6-mile range. So as far as January's gone, I think a lot of times I look at January as just trying to get back on the horse. This January was more focused on not getting out of shape, moving forwards, and running all those tempo miles. And I think I did a pretty good job of going 70 miles a week, as well as essentially hitting a 20% ratio both weeks after the Houston Marathon. What I was able to do was get some long run workouts in with a decent amount of mileage at that high pace. But I need to improve on that. So going into February, the goal is going to be to consistently run that 65 miles per week. So I'm going to scale down the mileage, but I have to hit that 13 to 15 miles per week of speed. If I can go further, great. But it's going to be determined by how well I recover, how much I'm sleeping, and how much essentially I feel like I'm ready to go come speed workout day. In order to increase the speed, the 2 things I'm going to focus on are 1, doing more strides. I think that doing strides in general is something that I need to do for better leg turnover, better body mechanics, and anything that's involved in going at those faster than a 6 minute per mile pace. The second thing I'm going to work on is mile repeats. I think that while doing these short tempos at a 620 pace are good for my overall turnover, getting those 4 or 5 reps at that 6 minute per mile pace is going to be way better, and it's going to allow me to get more speed work in during those runs. So coming up on Thursday, I'm going to try and do a 9-mile run with a 4x run at a 6 flat pace, for example. The final thing I'm going to try and do is just extend my stamina. I've got to start getting into those 20-mile long runs with those double-digit miles at marathon paces. The goal marathon pace for a 3 flat is 6:51 minute per mile. But anyone that's run with the pace group knows that 6:51 is not what we're going to go out at. We're probably going to go out at a 6:45. So in order to best prepare myself for that, I'm trying to run those 6:40s right now in my Saucony endorphin speeds, and when I gear up to the Alpha Flies, hopefully just rocking off a ton of 6:45s in a row will be no problem. As far as the other things occurring in February, I've got a 5K at the end of February on the 23rd, going up to Cowtown to run the corporate 5K. And the goal there will be a 17:50 as far as overall speed, pace, whatever you want to call it. I ran an 18:20 at the Trophy Trot up here in Houston on January 5th or 7th kind of range. And I opened up with a 5:40, then followed it up with 2 6-minute miles. I really think if I just open up at a 5:40 and stay at that 5:40, it'll be a whole lot easier. So looking forward to February. The goal will be just continuing January, but now we're not going to be looking at it as, can I do 70 miles? Can I do that higher intensity? But more so, let's keep executing and hitting quality workouts this time. I think a lot of the time leading up to CIM, it wasn't always quality workouts, it was just quantity workouts. I'd go out for 6 miles and end up running 4. I'd go out for 2 miles and I couldn't hit this pace, but I'd run 6. This time it's going to be about hitting the prescribed workout every single time at the prescribed pace. And to that end, I have to make sure I'm drawing up good workouts and I'm also recovering well. So hopefully at the end of February, we have both a 17:55K and something around a 20-mile long run with 10 miles at a 6:40 pace. I think both of those things would be great goals to see at the end of this month.